My best friend picked me for 7 minutes in heaven. She locked the door. Start the clock. The room went completely silent when my name was called. Out of everyone sitting in that bright afternoon circle, my best friend, Ilara, had chosen me. She stood across from me with a strange calmness in her eyes, then walked toward the old storage room at the end of the hallway. I followed her, confused, nervous, and completely unaware that the next 7 minutes would change the way I understood our friendship forever. She opened the door, stepped inside, looked back at me, and locked it behind us. Then she took out her phone, started the timer, and said, "Start the clock." I remember thinking it was just another silly game. I had no idea she had been carrying a secret for months. Before I continue, if you believe that kindness, friendship, and second chances can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House. Sometimes a simple act of kindness can reach someone at exactly the moment they need it most. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and our college friends had gathered at an old community center after a small graduation celebration. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, turning the dusty air golden. Everyone was laughing, taking pictures, and remembering the years we had spent together. I had been trying to smile, but inside I felt completely exhausted. My name was Rowan, and while everyone else seemed excited about the future, I felt as though mine had already disappeared. I had lost my job 2 months earlier, my father had been struggling with his health, and I had quietly stopped applying for opportunities because every rejection felt heavier than the one before. Ilara was the only person who knew how bad things had become. She had been my best friend since our first year of college. We had shared lunches when neither of us had enough money for separate meals, stayed awake during exam nights, celebrated each other's smallest victories, and sat silently beside one another during our worst days. But recently, I had started avoiding her. I was ashamed that I couldn't move forward. I stopped answering messages quickly. I declined invitations. I told her I was busy when the truth was that I simply didn't want anyone to see how lost I felt. That afternoon, someone suggested playing an old party game called 7 Minutes in Heaven. Everyone laughed at the ridiculousness of it, and soon names were being picked from folded pieces of paper. I barely paid attention until Ilara reached into the bowl. She unfolded a paper, looked directly at me, and smiled. My heart stopped when she called my name. The others laughed and started teasing us, but Ilara didn't laugh. She simply walked toward the storage room. I followed her, still believing this was nothing more than a harmless joke. When the door clicked shut behind us and the lock turned, I looked at her in confusion. She sat on an old wooden box, placed her phone on the floor, and started a 7-minute timer. Then she looked at me with the same expression she had worn the first time she noticed I was pretending to be okay. I expected a joke, but instead she reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder. Inside were printed job listings, application confirmations, notes, and even a list of companies she had researched for me. I stared at the pages without understanding. Ilara had been applying for jobs on my behalf. For weeks, while I had been hiding from everyone, she had been searching for opportunities, fixing my resume, contacting people she knew, and sending applications to places she thought might give me a chance. She had even written down the dates of interviews I could potentially attend. I felt my eyes burning, and for the first time in months, I couldn't pretend that I was fine. She had not locked that door to trap me. She had locked it because she knew I would run away from the conversation if she gave me the chance. The timer continued counting down. I finally understood that the 7 minutes were never about the game. They were about giving me 7 minutes where I couldn't escape from the truth. I had convinced myself that being unemployed made me worthless. I had started believing that every rejection was proof that I wasn't good enough. But Ilara had never seen me that way. She reminded me that losing a job wasn't the same as losing my future. She reminded me of every difficult thing I had survived before. She reminded me that sometimes people don't need someone to solve their entire life, they just need someone willing to sit beside them while they find the strength to stand again. When the timer reached 1 minute, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from my father. I hadn't known she had spoken to him. The note contained only a few sentences, but they broke the wall I had built around myself. My father had written that he didn't care how quickly I succeeded. He cared that I didn't stop believing that I could. The timer reached 0. Ilara unlocked the door, but neither of us immediately walked out. The noise of our friends laughing outside suddenly sounded very far away. I hugged her, not because she had found me a job, but because she had found me when I had stopped trying to find myself. That afternoon, we walked outside into the bright sunlight together. The world hadn't magically changed. I was still unemployed. My problems hadn't disappeared. My father's health was still uncertain, and I still had a long road ahead of me. But something inside me had changed. The next morning, I opened my laptop before fear could stop me. I updated my resume. I applied for 3 jobs. Then 5 more. I didn't expect every application to work. I simply decided that rejection would no longer be allowed to define me. 3 weeks later, I received an email inviting me to an interview. 2 days after that, I received a job offer. It wasn't my dream job. It wasn't a perfect salary. But when I read that email, I cried because I finally understood what Ilara had been trying to teach me. Sometimes a second chance doesn't arrive as a miracle. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a friend who refuses to let you give up. Months later, I asked Ilara why she had chosen me that afternoon. She smiled and told me that she had watched me disappear behind my own shame for too long. She knew I didn't need 7 minutes in heaven. I needed 7 minutes where someone could remind me that I still belonged on earth, still had a future, and still had people who believed in me. And that became the memory I carried with me whenever life became difficult. So if this story touched your heart, please don't just watch silently. Like the video, share it with someone who may be struggling, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House. You never know who might be watching this today and quietly wondering if anyone still believes in them. And before the story ends, I have one special request: comment, second chance, below if you believe one kind person can change the direction of another person's life. Because sometimes the person who saves you isn't a stranger, a hero, or someone with all the answers. Sometimes it's simply your best friend, standing beside you in the sunlight, refusing to let you give up on yourself.